shape, flux capacitor, a 1981 DeLorean, and a dial to 1985. You guys get it? Right, Back to the Future, get a time machine. For most of us, the rat race of life tends to prevent us from any deep thought about the universe, even about our own lives. But whenever we go to work or meet someone for dinner, we're acknowledging that we must be at a particular place, perhaps on a specific floor, at a specified time. This requires the knowledge of the universe, 4 dimensions, and we might not even realize that we're using these through our everyday life. The 4 dimensions of the universe, first of all, are back, forward, left, right, and up and down. The 4th dimension is time. Now, for the most part, people usually believe that these dimensions cannot be altered or changed in any way. Now, the 4th dimension, time, is malleable, and it's not the same throughout the universe. Now, because time is not a constant, the possibility of time travel does exist. The concept of time has intrigued people for centuries. Ancient civilizations have placed great importance on time, like the Aztecs and the Mayans. All of the structures were based on the universe and the stars. One of the earliest stories depicting time travel did not involve any sort of machine at all. For example, the main character in Washington Irving's Rip Van Winkle simply slept for several decades. And in the story of King Arthur, his daughter Gwyneth slept for 500 years under Merlin's spell. This is a form of time travel. She slept for 500 years and awoke in the future. So, this idea of time travel is actually quite common, and seems to be embedded in man to a certain extent. However, the believability that time is a flexible aspect of our universe is almost non-existent in American society. Some of those who oppose the possibility of time travel or time being malleable are religious people. However, many should take into account that in the Christian theology, for example, God is viewed as universal. In the scripture of the Bible, such as Jesus claimed in John chapter 8, verse 58, before Abraham was born, I am. This is from Jesus. And Peter's statement in book of Peter, verse 20, Jesus was chosen before the creation of the world. Now, this implies that God does not occupy the same timeline as us. This is further supported by the declaration in the book of Malachi, I, the Lord, do not change. This is because change requires movement along some sort of temporary scale or medium. 2 interpretations of these statements could be that God exists outside of space and time, or that God exists at every point in space and time simultaneously. So although some skeptics remain, the idea regarding a form of time travel existed biblically long before science grabbed a hold of this concept. There have been opposing views among the public and within the scientific community on the topics of time travel for decades. But more evidence today shows that time, in fact, is being stretched and compressed and is much like a flexible material. For example, the Earth's gravity warps space-time, making time on Earth different than time further away in space. Now, in an interview between Dr. Colombo of UMBC, NASA out of Maryland, and the Canadian Space Geodesy Forum, Colombo states, a special relativity correction for time dilation has to be made to the estimated clock of the satellite receiver if one intends to use this estimate to monitor the clock or to do time transfer that involves this clock. Now, what he's saying is that he's describing how the satellite receivers that orbit the Earth the time progresses differently at a different speed than it does here on Earth, and it has to be adjusted. So that's what they're discussing. This is profound evidence that time is absolutely not fixed or consistent at all. Now, Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time passes more slowly for fast-moving objects. For instance, if a clock is traveling near the speed of light, its hands will begin to slow down as it approaches the speed of light. That being said, we can safely conclude that this effect allows time travel to the future, but it doesn't have anything to say about the past. But this is not time travel as we imagine in the movies. What about time travel back in time? Now, traveling to the past is also possible, not only because of how time differs in space and how it is flexible, but for the simple fact that there is absolutely no scientific equation or physical law that rules this out. Aside from these facts, some scientists believe traveling to the past is highly unlikely. This is because the issues of paradoxes must be resolved before we can conclude anything about the past. Now, for example, what happens if someone goes back in time and kills their grandfather? These sort of paradoxes need to be resolved before any sort of time traveling can even be thought about. Now, another interesting observation to the unlikelihood of traveling into the past is presented by Stephen Hawking. Hawking suggests the absence of tourists from the future constitutes a strong argument against the existence of time traveling into the past. Now, this is a great argument, but I found an article that presents a new idea. However, in August 23rd, 2007, an article presented a new concept. It states, hypothetically, a wormhole is a black hole, like two black holes together, stretched, which creates a strong force of gravity in the center, which can drive something through it. So, one end of the wormhole will be accelerated to the speed of light, perhaps with an advanced amount of gravitational energy, and this would experience less passage of time than the stationary end. So an object that goes into the stationary end will come out of the other end in the past relative to the time that it enters. Now, one significant limitation of such a time machine is that it's only possible to go as far back in time as the initial creation of the machine. This could be an alternative concept to the explanation that Hawking gave. Now, a time machine, what it's saying is a time machine will be built someday, but hasn't been built yet. So, people from the future cannot reach this far back in time. It is now understood that physical time and reality are not fixed. So how do we, with physical third-dimensional views, take our bodies along with us through space and time? Now, I want to share something with you about a conversation I had with my dad one day. We were looking at the Phoenix lights on TV, and we're talking about whether these UFOs are alien or not. He says, you know what, they're probably just people from the future. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, you know. So, anyway. So how do we take ourselves along through space-time? It is commonly assumed that a machine will eventually allow us to do this. But in an article by the Indian Daily Tech team, mouth is dry, an entirely different concept is presented. This is what the article says. In the absence of supergravity in the physical world that is not controllable, some scientists believe that time dilation can be achieved with the help of integrated consciousness, the use of mind projections and regressions. The mind can be used to create the artificial wormhole where world lines can be distorted. Now, this sounds pretty far out, but in a 1991 nationwide Roper polls come from the Roper Center. First of all, Roper Center's large archive of